Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to build bonds with people and make friends using the game Persona 5 Royal. And this might seem really cool to some of you clicking on this because you're a fan of the Persona series. You might say, what the heck is this guy talking about? Why is he using video games? If you don't even know what this game is or don't play a lot of games. Or you might have some mixed feelings of like, why are you talking about building real human connections using a video game as a metaphor? That's so dehumanizing, right? You might have a lot of different responses. And I'll cover all of those objections later on, but I feel like that would really just bore the hell out of you without getting to the meat of it. So I'm just going to get to the meat of the lesson of the video, and you'll see the truth of what I'm saying. We'll just barrel right into it and not have too much of a preface. And then afterwards, we can handle all of, maybe some objections or questions you have about this method of using a video game to talk about human connections, okay? So this is a game, if you don't know, it's called Persona 5 Royal. It's an amazing game, so is its predecessor, Persona 5. In this game, I'm not going to explain the plot, but basically a large part of the game is making friends and making connections. And part of making connections with people is when you're in conversation with them, you have to pick the right choice, right? And some choices can give you a neutral response, right? So you're just going to, it works, but it doesn't necessarily give you like points in terms of building a bond with that person. But if you start to choose the right choices and you get like +1 or +2, it builds up basically your connection and bond with them. And then once it reaches a certain point, which you'll see in this video that it does, it's going to level up, right? So you're going to go from bond level 1 with someone to bond level 2. And the max is bond level 10. And if you get like a bond level 10 with a girl in the game and you chose the romantic option, it means that you get together with them. If you don't go romantic with them, then that's fine. You just become a level 10 best friend, right? You friend zone them because it's you make the choice, right? It's a very ideal universe where you friend zone the girls, you don't get friend zoned by them. So we're going to go through one of these conversations, right? And this is early on in the relationship with this person, so it's a very good example, right? So I'm going to show you the responses that like are the best choice. I don't know why this isn't open up. Oh, because I was full screening it, right? Okay, so we're in this conversation, and I already gave the first response, right? So basically, this guy is a so you can see the +2, right, and the +0s. So basically, oh shit, no, sorry, it's rank 3 that we're in the third conversation, the third meeting with him. So you make different choices and you get like +2 here. And then some of the choices get +0, right? So not all of these choices when you talk will actually build a connection because they're quote unquote not the right choice, right? So we'll get to the morality of that later on because I don't want to cover that right now. It's important, obviously, but I want to focus just on the the strategic angle of it. So this question we're going to get is the response number 2. So if we choose this, we get +2. If we choose this, we get +2. If we choose this one, we get +0. So the context of this is basically, here, I'll bring these side by side so that we can. So this guy is a school therapist, and because something happened at the school and, people have some trauma and they want to talk about it. And this guy comes in and he wants to build a bond with everyone, and he makes a deal with us to, if I remember correctly, come to have sessions with him, and he's going to basically do therapy with you. And if you choose to do therapy with him, the candy that he actually gives you snacks, literally, like that's his. he likes to give you snacks to buy you off as a joke. But also he promises to give you mental training to make your mind stronger. And what this does in game is it makes you have more like magic power, or SP, spirit power. And so we're going to go through the conversation. We're going to see how these things play out, right? So how these choices are like the right choice in the conversation, and why some choices are not the right choice in the conversation. And I'm going to go over like if this is even an accurate representation of human connections, because you are only limited to a few choices. But at the same time, there's only so many things you can say to a person when you're asked certain questions. I mean, technically, there's an infinity of creative responses you can give someone, but, unless you're just going to randomly start spouting, random words at them, there's usually a few pretty common paths that people will take, right? So let's get started, and then, like I said, we'll get into the details later. So he had just asked us, I forgot. Okay, so we're just going to keep going. Having said that, it's a little awkward that I have to ask for your help, but, oh yeah, if, we're down to keep doing this experiment with him, where he learns about the teenage psyche from us. So you remember how I asked to help me with my research, right? I'm going to learn how high school kids think and how they deal with trauma and blah, blah, blah. So we have three choices. We have, of course, yeah for our deal, and I forgot, right? So I forgot, right? That's a +0. Now, that's a very easy one to explain. We've talked to this guy. We've already had 2 previous conversations, right? And, or one. And if you were to go to someone who is a therapist, it's their job to talk to people, and you made a deal with him, right? And the deal was what I explained. If you just say, oh, I forgot, that's a douchey answer, right? So when you're building a connection with someone, even if it's a therapist, right, you are demonstrating that you weren't even paying attention. Like your deal that you made with them, and obviously it's their living, so it's something really important to them. Oh, I forgot. Right? This seems really simple, right? But it makes sense. Actually, human connections are really that simple, right? I've had tons of clients who would tell me about their problems with friends or girls. And the solution a lot of times is very simple, but the problem is they weren't thinking about the other person, right? So some of you might say, oh, I forgot, duh, that's, obviously that's the, that's not a good answer. But people do this all the time. People get lost in their own minds and what they want in the midst of conversation, right? Because life is not an RPG where you sit here and you can think about things, right? Life is a first-person shooter or a Elden Ring Dark Souls game where there's no pause button, right? You press pause and the enemies are still going to be, the world still moves around you, right? So you don't have time to consider these things and go, oh, am I considering this person's feelings? Da-da-da-da. I mean, you can do that, but you have to do it in real time, or you have to take a pause and think about it. And that requires you to endure awkwardness and endure the pressure to speak, right? So we would think that these things are really simple, but they're not always that simple, right? So in the heat of a moment, especially when, someone asks you a question and you had a bad day and you're tired, maybe you go to your therapy session or you go to talk to your friend and he's like, hey, remember that conversation we had? And you're like, oh, I don't remember, because you're distracted by school, or, your girlfriend isn't texting you back or whatever. But by saying I forgot, you make this person feel bad. So you get +0. Or in fact, what's really going to happen is you get a negative point, right? But what are some other 2 ways to respond, right? Yeah, for our deal. Well, of course it's a +2, and yeah, for our deal is a +2. But see, if this was real life, right, of course would be like a +3, a 4, or a 5, and then a yeah for our deal would be a +2 or 3, right? Because by saying yeah for our deal, what you're doing is you're recognizing that, this is so absurd that I'm using the game, but it's actually like a very good example, right? If you could get past the obvious silliness on the surface. When you say yeah for our deal, what you're doing is you're just recognizing, yes, just look at the words that we're using. Yeah, for our deal. First of all, it is dehumanizing a bit. It's like my interactions with you and my memory of wanting to help you is only predicated upon the fact that we're having a deal, and after we get done with the conversation, you're going to give me points to my magic, right? Or mental strength that are going to help me kill monsters in battle. I mean, that's the in-game context, right? But real life works that way too. Like a lot of friendships aren't only just built on mutual benevolence. They're built upon a utility, like you get something from each other. And it's not always material. Sometimes it's social status. Sometimes it's, they're the guy who always goes to parties, so it's cool to be around him. A lot of our motivations for interacting with each other aren't always as pure as we think. So this response is it's built upon reciprocity. It's built upon the fact that we are, using each other. I'm making sure I'm still recording. Okay, yeah. There's my ADD and my OCD playing out in real time. So, yeah, for our deal is a +2 response, in my opinion. It's nice. You're at least sticking with what you promised the person, and you remembered something that's obviously important to them because it's their job. But you're still you're leaving it at a very neutral level. But if you were to respond, of course, you might still be implying that it's only for our deal. Maybe your motivation isn't that I want to help this guy. You really are just happy to get your deal. But the fact that you choose this choice of words has a completely different effect on someone. I mean, imagine you're this doctor and you're trying to do therapy for this kid and you really want to help him and it's your job and blah, 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 blah. And he's only in it for the juice boxes, right? He's getting his little juice boxes and he's just happy to get his snacks. So he just says, yeah, for our deal, I get snacks and magic power. You wouldn't feel the best. So your bond wouldn't grow that well with him. So even though in the game it's represented as an equal choice, it's not really, right? So of course is a great response, right? But this gets really complicated. It could also be the person who's like the charmy kiss-asser who tells you what you want to hear, right? And he's just like, yeah, of course, yeah, I remember our deal, right? So this gets really, really complicated. But, obviously Persona it's a video game, so it has to have some flowchart logical trees of choice, or, it's going to be impossible to represent human communication on that complicated of a level. But I wanted to use this game as a perfect explanation of the depth of building a connection with someone, right? So let's keep going. See, boom. So when you gave a +2 response, right? This is just a guide if someone doesn't want to actually use their brain, right? They just want to get the perfect score. So you get a little note and it goes, ding, you did a good job, right? And what happens if you get multiple ding, ding, dings in a row, right? All these have +0. So you have, sometimes answers to questions, conversations that people have a neutral impact on your connection with them. But if you do things in a row, it builds up a meter of connection with them. Like it builds up the tempo. It's like you're playing a rhythm game and you're like da-dun, 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 and you keep making the good response and your connection with that person grows. But if you were to do like a +2, then a -1, then a +3, and then a +0, then your connection with the person is very staggery, right? But that's how a lot of human connection works, because you're not always going to give the perfect response. But if you're a good communicator, you are giving a good response, so long as you're giving an honest response. Because as this game Persona, this gets really deep. Like, I could go so deep with this analogy of this Persona game. Like, in this game, you are using personas. Like, the entire point of the game is to demonstrate that people have layers to their personality. And even when you're in battle, you're putting on different masks, and different masks can summon different monsters that have different powers. And you need different powers to fight different monsters, because different monsters are weak to different kinds of powers. So you have to change your personas to get what you want out of life. And just like in real life, you have different personas with different people, right? It's only immoral if those aren't yours. So basically, are you lying? So long as you're not lying to someone and deceiving someone, like, I care about you, but I don't care about you, or you say I don't care about you, but you do, because you have insecurity issues or, commitment issues or whatever, then it's okay if you're being honest. You have a plethora of ways to respond to people in your life. And ideally, what you want to do is choose the highest point value you can get, as long as it's honest. It has to be honest. So I got a little sidetracked there, because I told you the analogy and the metaphor goes super deep, and I could go on for hours about the Persona games. I think they're a fantastic set of games. They're not only just great games, they have a great story, great characters, whatever. This is gonna turn into a video game review, right? So he responds nicely. I said you'd be helping with my research, but don't worry, I won't be doing anything too difficult or intensive. But he gave you he got a +2, right? So all's good. And I was recording this video kind of slow because I didn't know if I was going to do the video in sync. All right, so But let's see, maybe I should start at the beginning. I can tell you a little about what this research is for. What I'm studying now is pain felt in the mind, or perhaps more fancifully, in the heart. Some specific examples include the pain of someone saying hurtful things to you, blah, blah, blah. I skipped that too fast. Maybe this would be clear: pain defined by abstracts like trauma or stress, right? And this is a really cool topic. As someone who recently has been going through a lot of physical symptoms because of anxiety, because of PTSD from being in Ukraine last year when the war started. Artillery shells, they sound like they do in video games. I can promise you that. Had one fly over my head. Anyways, so bodily, physical pain can be thought of something necessary, right? An automatic response to injury, illness, or whatever. It's so fascinating. It's true. But you can have pain that's induced by the mind. It's very cool. But what about pains? Right. Oh God, this is gonna turn into a philosophy thing. You know, I'm gonna be talking about how, you know, but it's true, right? Like if you get upset over someone and someone hurts you, like a girl rejects you, like you feel it in your heart. It's so interesting. Anyways, that pain isn't born from any tangible problems in our bodies. It's something strange and immaterial. Okay, I guess, you know we have a lot to learn. We do. So I want to learn about these pains. Right, so you have to be paying attention to this conversation. Right, I'm just going blah, 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 blah. But you have to be paying attention to what people are saying. You have to be interested in what people are saying. Because if you want to get +2s and +3s and +30s, especially when you're talking to a girl and you want her to like you, right, you got to give good responses as long as they're honest, right? So I guess I won't spend 10 minutes, you know, defending the morality of this. Like, as long as you're being honest, of course you should give the right response. So my question to you, when do you truly feel pain in your heart? So when someone betrays me, right? When I lie, when I get punched. So all of these options have +0. So it doesn't matter what you choose, right? Because this is just up to your personal choice. This is where it's like, this is where your personality comes into play, right? Like, I feel the worst when I create a moral error, right? Or I feel the worst when someone does something moral against me. Or I feel the worst physical pain, right? So this is, I break morality, someone breaks morality against me, and this is just, you know, these don't bother me that much. It hurts when I get hurt. So personally, I chose when someone betrays me because for the most part, I'm very, very strict about not lying. It's a very important, you know, belief of mine, right? So you have this choice, you have this, boom, click that. So, oh shit, what did he say? I see. Yeah, I can sympathize there. Sometimes all it takes is one betrayal for intense trust to turn into intense pain. I mean, imagine like you had a girlfriend cheat on you, or if a best friend like just drop you out of nowhere. Like, it's gonna hurt. It can be rough, blah, blah, blah.
For example.
So you have to be paying attention to this. I know I'm going kind of fast, but see, look, okay. Do you have any thoughts on this kind of pain? Now, this requires a little bit more finesse because you do have an option here that gives +0, right? And then you have an option that gives +2. It's a seed for new loves, right? So like, if you get hurt by someone who, well, let's say specifically what he said. Okay, we have pain because we fall in love, right? So this seems necessary. It's a seed for new loves. This is where I would disagree with Persona, actually, right? Because I'm a Buddhist. So for me, you don't need to fall in love, right? It doesn't seem super necessary. You can have love without attachment. And that means pure benevolence, right? Pure, it's called metta, right? For me, this is just my personal answer, right? You can even be in a relationship with someone. I mean, if it's a sexual relationship, then there has to be some level of attachment because you're giving into lust with them. But if you have a friendship, it can be fully just you want to do good for them, right? You don't need anything from them, right? So with romantic love, this is what this question is about. If you see, oh, that one's necessary. To me, that seems like a cope. I don't think that you need to be attached to someone in order to love them. I think you can give them the full, you know, full love of your heart without getting attached to them and being sad when they're gone. But it's difficult, obviously. Or this is kind of a cope too, in my opinion, where, oh, you get your heart broken, but then you get a chance to love someone else. I think it's just an extension of it's necessary. I actually ended up choosing we'd be better off without it, right? Ideally, we would be better without that kind of love, right? So I actually end up choosing, and I don't get the ding, right? So this was my truth. Even in a fucking video game, right? I just answered honestly. And interestingly enough, he actually says, I see, you know, my perspective is actually pretty similar, which is very strange, right? Which is making me wonder if he's actually going to be a villain. I don't know why, I have a weird suspicion that he's going to be the villain, because usually you have a connection with someone, because I haven't played the game fully, I haven't finished it. This is where I am in the game, that's why I recorded it. So, I'm thinking he's going to be the actual villain, because no, I'm not going to give away any spoilers for people who haven't played Persona 4. So I didn't actually choose the best option, but interestingly enough, in conversation, he gave me a nice response. So he might be blowing smoke up my ass, because by the game standards, I didn't create a connection with him. But by the conversational standards, I did create a good connection with him, right? So this is very, very, very interesting. But if you had done one of these choices, you would have gotten a good response, and you would have gotten a ding, 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 and he would have responded in a different way. But I'm not going to go over and see the different responses. So, internal emotional pain is hard to deal with. Okay, so he does kind of give some context. He's like, you know, it does seem like it's necessary, but personally speaking, yes. If pain can be avoided, it should be. Maybe it shouldn't exist at all. Oh yeah, this guy's definitely gonna be the bad guy in Persona 5. Yeah, this is just clear as day. I hope I'm not spoiling for anyone. I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing he's gonna, because that kind of talk usually comes from a villain, right? There's a kind way to do it, like the Buddhist perspective, but usually when people, you know, you get kind of Madara, Chiha, kind of like, oh, I'm going to make a world without pain, which means everyone's going to be in a dream and be a slave. You helped me realize that purpose again. Thank you. So actually, he's like, thanks for having responded to me, and then you have a response to it. Now, both of these responses have +2. You know, sometimes the answer to creating a connection with someone is very fucking simple. You don't have to, it's not super complicated. You know, you don't have some super, super difficult flow chart of like, should I say this with this verb in this tense? And, you know, like you can just like, being nice and supportive a lot of times just creates a connection with people, right? So, you know, I liked to phrase it, did that help? Like, oh, did I actually help you? Because there is a different, like, they have a different tone, right? Don't worry about it. It's like, yeah, don't worry about it, you know, whatever. I got you, bro. And then did that help is like more like in compassion in my mind. Like, oh, did that help? Like, I hope it did. So, let's see. Okay. So we finished that conversation, right? So then we ranked up our connection with him. Right? And we got a prize out of it, right? It's so like, I know that life isn't a video game, but we can use these things as metaphors to help us understand things better. So you get an actual power that when you're in combat because of your connection with him, right? So the lesson, the metaphor is actually purposeful by the game creators, very clearly. It's on the nose. Like, your connections with people help you grow. They give you power, right? You learn things from each other. I mean, that's in Buddhism, right? The entirety of the holy life is actually built upon good friendship. But, you know, we're getting sidetracked.
All right.
So your connection with this person has leveled up, right? So your friendship with them has gotten higher because you got enough pluses, right? So if you don't choose the pluses options, you do eventually break up with someone because at some point you're going to choose something right. I mean, unless you're just horrible, right? And it's going to stagnate your growth with that person, right? So it might take you a certain amount of meetings to reach a certain rank with someone, like let's say a friend that you're trying to make in real life, right? You're talking to them and you don't choose the right dialogue options, right? Because you haven't yet learned how to be a good communicator. Even though you feel a certain way, this is how you get rid of the whole, oh, I'm being a fraud, I'm not being honest about my emotions, right? What you do is you just say, look, I feel X, Y, or Z. I feel a little bit of all these, but I'm going to choose Y because it's a +2 and it makes the other person feel better. And it's true also. I could also say this, right? But why wouldn't I choose the +2 option if it's also true and also gives them good feelings and builds a connection with them? All right? That's how you get past that moral quandary of like, you think about what you're going to say before you speak. Right? So if ever you think about what you say before you speak, you are manufacturing bonds with people. It may not feel that way because you're not slowing down and seeing how connections in real life work, but that's how it's actually working, right? So get past this like, oh, I don't want to be that. Use your own common sense, right? If you're mechanicizing every single conversation and you're always thinking about what's the right answer, well, then maybe you're taking it a bit too far. But most people should start mechanizing their conversations a bit more and being more skillful about it, and not just thinking about what's going to give me +2, but what's going to give us +2, what's going to give them +2, because sometimes you have to sacrifice. You have to give a +0 to tell the truth, like I did, right? I said this because it was my truth, so I got a +0, right? But sometimes also you'll have to tell someone something that they don't want to hear, so they might feel like it gives you a negative if that was an option on here. But overall, later on, it's going to have a plus value because you told them a harsh truth that they needed to learn, right? So this gets really, really nuanced, but I was hoping that this example could just maybe give you a little bit of an entertaining, real concrete demonstration of how building connections with people can be predicated upon just choosing the right dialogue options, right? So, this is where he realizes he forgot to give you his special thing. 1 second, let me go. So we go home, and then he texts you again, or calls you. He's like, hey, this is when you finish hanging out with someone and they text you, hey man, I really had a good time. All right. So you could have said, oh, you're actually working? See, this is what someone would say if they're like a joke, a joke machine. They're just constantly spitting out jokes, but it gets annoying after some point. Oh, you're actually working? Or getting to your, see, that's a +0 because it's like annoying. Like, this isn't the time to joke with people, right? When someone goes to you and says, hey, thanks, I really appreciate it, you don't joke with them. Oh, you're actually working? But you also don't give a neutral response. Oh, getting to your research now? Are you moving on to the next thing on the docket today in your schedule? Like, no, you got to reciprocate, right? They asked you, they said, hey, thanks. And you say, yeah, good work, good job, good stuff. It was nice talking to you too. I enjoyed it. I had fun. Or if it's a girl and you just, hooked up with her, she's like, hey, thanks for a good time. You don't say, oh, you're wiping off the cum off your face now, did you enjoy that fucking dickin'? You don't say that, and you don't say, oh, what do you got planned for the rest of the day? If you just dick down a girl and had a good time, you say, hey, good work over there, and that makes her feel good. That builds a connection, and you get +1 to your connection with her, right? Makes sense. All right. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll actually be doing some more Persona videos because I think I want to do one on combat and maybe on romance too. But the combat has a nice metaphor because of like the resistances, like ice and fire and lightning and nuclear energy and blah, blah, blah. You know if you play the game. If you don't, just think Pokemon, right? Like lightning beats grass element, rock beats fucking lightning. And using different effectivenesses of like personas in this game to actually have an effect on when you're talking to someone, because different people are resistant to different types of conversation, like different elements of conversation. Anyways, the metaphor could get super deep, but I'll leave you there. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell. Check out my description if you're interested in coaching with me or any of my books or my courses. And I will see you guys very soon. Ciao.